Israel prepares its ground offensive in Gaza, this while world leaders are struggling to find ways to de-escalate the conflict, provide humanitarian assistance and also accelerate the release of hostages. Here's all you need to know about the latest developments. Israeli ground offensive of the war-battered Palestinian enclave appeared imminent as formations of Israeli tanks and other military equipment were seen positioning around Gaza's border in southern Israel. Palestinians say that they have received renewed warnings from Israel's military to move from north of Gaza to the south of the Strip. The warning added that they could be identified as sympathizers with the terrorist organization if they stayed put. More than 35,000 Palestinian refugees are now taking shelter at a tent camp in Khan Younis city of southern Gaza. The situation remains dire for these refugees. According to a UNICEF official, 1 million children in Gaza need urgent protection. Meanwhile, the Pentagon has moved to step up its military readiness in the region. It is ordering the activation of air defense systems throughout the region and has alerted additional U.S. forces that they might be deployed soon. U.S. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin said in a statement that the moves were in response to recent escalations by Iran and its proxy forces across West Asia. Austin, however, did not say how many additional U.S. troops would be deployed to the region. Israeli aircraft struck a compound beneath a mosque in West Bank's Jenin. Israel said that it was being used by militants to organize attacks. Israel claimed that dozens of Hamas terrorists were killed during the overnight raids and they launched inside the Gaza Strip. Meanwhile, Hamas said that at least 55 people were killed in an overnight raid on the Gaza Strip. Hundreds of demonstrators, including those family of those missing after the Hamas attacks on the 7th of October, protested in central Tel Aviv, demanding the government to take immediate action to return their loved ones being held hostage by Hamas. Hamas had earlier claimed that they were willing to release 2 more hostages on humanitarian grounds, but that Israel declined to receive them. Israel replied on the comments saying that it was propaganda. Meanwhile, Foreign Minister Wang Yi, on a phone call with his Malaysian counterpart, said that China will always support the legitimate aspirations of Arab and Islamic countries. Wang Yi's call to Zamre Abdul Qadir came as China continued to actively engage senior officials and diplomats around the world in an effort to mediate the crisis. Earlier, a peace summit was also held in Egypt's capital to discuss the Israel-Hamas war. It aimed to de-escalate the conflict and provide humanitarian aid for civilians in the Gaza Strip. While Arab and Muslim states called for an immediate end to Israel's offensive, Western countries mostly voiced more modest goals such as humanitarian relief for civilians. UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres had made a visit to the Rafah border crossing between Egypt and Gaza Strip in a bid to get aid flowing into Gaza, and he talked about the visit at the meeting.
Yesterday, I went to the Rafah border crossing. There I saw a paradox, a humanitarian catastrophe playing out in real time. On the one hand, I saw hundreds of trucks teeming with food and other essential supplies. On the other hand, we know that just across the border there are 2 million people without water, food, fuel, electricity and medicine. Children, mothers, the elderly, the sick. Full trucks on one side, empty stomachs on the other.
On Saturday, 20 trucks carrying aid crossed into Gaza. This is the first convoy of humanitarian supplies since Israel began its siege. As the conflict escalates, residents of northern Israel and both sides of the Israel-Lebanon border are now fearful of a second front in this conflict. This comes as Israel said its aircraft struck Hezbollah targets in Lebanon on Saturday and that one of its soldiers was hit by an anti-tank missile. While the Iran-backed group said that the strike killed 6 of its fighters, Israel is facing strong opposition from the United States, which also fears a true two-front war, which could risk igniting a major regional conflict. And for more on this, our correspondent Jody Cohen has sent us this report from Ra'anana. Listen in.
So in the latest, further rockets have been fired into central and southern Israel from Hamas in Gaza. But we're also seeing an escalation from Hezbollah in Lebanon. And the Israel Defense Forces say they are evacuating a further 14 Israeli communities on the northern border. Now, according to Hezbollah's deputy chief, Sheikh Naim Qassem, Hezbollah are in the heart of the battle and are, quote, trying to weaken the Israeli enemy. The past 2 weeks have also seen shelling from Syria, with Syria now claiming that Israel has struck Aleppo and Damascus airports. These airports have been targeted in the past, it's believed, to prevent the shipment of advanced weapons from Iran to its proxies. Meanwhile, the US has activated its air defense systems across West Asia and alerted US forces that they may soon be deployed. US Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin said this is in response to, quote, recent escalations by Iran and its proxy forces across the Middle East, suggesting that these steps will bolster regional deterrence efforts. This is Jodie Cohen for WION, World is One.
Now, we were also earlier joined by Irina Sukuman, who is a Middle East analyst and a human rights activist. Listen into her insights on this.
There was not a particular point to the summit other than to try to diffuse some of the heated rhetoric that has emerged from the international community over the conflict in the recent days, in particular in reaction to the Gaza hospital incident, where many of the world leaders rushed to blame Israel. And I think that the summit was more of a reaction to that incident and to the absolute insanity of riots that arose in the aftermath of that incident, and try to basically diffuse the tensions. I don't think it was meant to come up with any sort of particular solution, because any solution would necessitate the sort of action that the international community is not ready to take. It would mean working together with Israel to dismantle Hamas as a political organization.
WION is now available in your country. Download the app now. Get all the news on the move.